prosecuted. Welcome. So great to have you with us. So let's talk about what Manafort's lawyers are recommending. They wrote in the filing referencing the special counsel's sentencing recommendations. This range, roughly 20 years, is clearly disproportionate to the offense conduct for which Mr. Manafort was convicted. Do you agree with that?
Hey, Tanya. So I've been on both sides of these, right? I've been there as a prosecutor, and now I've been on the defense side where I'm helping clients to produce sentencing memos like this. And there's usually, they take one of two tacks, right? You either go defiant or you go penitent. Paul Manafort's going defiant, right? This is not a case in which he pled guilty in. So he is saying, look, I did this, but this is way out of proportion. The 20 years that the sentencing guidelines recommend are completely out of whack with the scope of the crimes that I've been convicted of. So he's going like fighting tooth and nail, saying, I do not deserve what the sentencing guidelines are recommending. And it's clear that he is going, aggressive at the court, and he's not taking anything for granted. Is
that a fair argument, do you think? Do you think that's something the judge is likely to accept?
Any defendant's going to make that, right? You're going to do two main things in a document like this. One, you're going to try to downplay the significance of your crimes. So he says, look, I committed white-collar crimes, but I didn't defraud anyone. This isn't like a Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't commit murder. I didn't sell drugs. So he's trying to downplay the significance of his crimes. That's one. The second thing is you throw yourself on the mercy of the court. You say, look, I'm the bedrock of my family. I have a wife. I have children. They're going to suffer. They've already suffered. That makes sense, right? It absolutely makes sense to throw yourself on the mercy of the court. It doesn't always make sense to be so argumentative. And I think that's going to fall on deaf ears because Judge Ellis is not one to sort of accept this argument that either I didn't know what I was doing or what I did wasn't such a big deal. Right. So it makes sense that he makes that argument. I'm not surprised, but I don't expect he'll get a lot of mileage out of it.
So, Joseph, I also want to get your response to another line in this filing. They write, quote, the cases that special counsel have brought against Mr. Manafort have devastated him personally, professionally, and financially. So Manafort's lawyers are making a legal argument, but they're also appearing to make a personal appeal. Do you expect that to be convincing?
I mean, you have to make it, right? Because as the reality is, these cases are financially devastating. They're reputationally devastating. And it's not just for the defendant. It's for the defendant's family, right? I mean, people feel disgraced as a result of these kinds of cases. So it makes sense that he'll make that argument, and it's probably his best one. I mean, he's an older guy. Even if he got 5 to 10 years, it's very likely that's going to be the rest of his life in prison. If it's 20 years, it's almost guaranteed to be. So I think that's the way to go. I don't think the defiant tap is going to get a lot of mileage, though.
Now, in a lot of these cases, it comes down to the judge. And the judge in this case, T.S. Ellis, has been somewhat sympathetic to Manafort in the past. How much weight, then, do you think these sentencing memos from each side will carry with him?
Well, so remember, early in this process, and it seems like a long time ago, but it was just last year, Judge Ellis did express some skepticism at the idea that this case wasn't really about going after Paul Manafort's white-collar crimes. It was about getting President Trump. And I have to think that's why early in this memo, Paul Manafort says, look, they started out coming at me about collusion. They didn't find it, and they found a bunch of other things instead. So I imagine he's hoping that might strike a chord with Judge Ellis because he did show that initial sort of skepticism about the prosecutor's true intentions. But that being said, when you lay out the extent of Paul Manafort's tax crimes, the millions of dollars of taxes that he did not pay, the bank fraud charges, the foreign agent, unregistered agent charges, they're pretty significant. So it's really difficult to ignore all that. And Judge Ellis has been around the block. He's seen a lot of cases. The Eastern District of Virginia deals with a lot of serious white-collar cases. So this is not the first time they've faced someone like Paul Manafort.
Nothing new to them.
No, it's not. I mean, it's a high-profile case for the rest of us, but an EDVA, the rocket docket, this is a kind of case they deal with all the time. So him trying to downplay the significance of rampant multi-year tax fraud, I don't think it's going to go very far.
Now, the special counsel prosecutors want a sentence of up to 24.5 years. Manafort's lawyers pointed to similar cases where defendants got far shorter sentences. So what sentence would you expect to be announced next Thursday? We know you don't have a crystal ball, but taking everything into consideration, what are you imagining will be reasonable?
So in the past, these sentencing guidelines were actually more than guidelines. Judges had to go within the guidelines. It was very difficult for a judge to go above or below. However, a change in the law recently has now made it that they are in fact truly recommendations. The judge can do anything he or she wants to do. That being said, a judge is still going to look for a reason to deviate well below those guidelines. Now, what are good reasons? Cooperation, truthfulness, helpfulness to the government, saving the government resources. None of those things existed in this case. Paul Manafort went kicking and screaming through his first trial. Remember, then he said he was going to cooperate. Then he didn't really cooperate. And it turns out it's really just kind of a big mess at this point. So I don't see anything other than maybe his age and his health that the judge might pick up on. But when it comes to giving it any kind of other redeeming qualities, there just aren't really any here in this case.
All right, Joseph Moreno, thank you so much for your insight.
Always a pleasure.
President Trump is being accused